You're just a gold digger, my mother-in-law Patricia sneered, waving my late grandmother's jewelry box in front of me. These beautiful pieces belong to someone who deserves them, my Emily. I sat quietly at her elaborate dining room table, watching as she roughly handled the antique rosewood box that had been in my family for generations. My name is Isabella Martinez, and at 34, I was watching my mother-in-law attempt to steal what she thought was my inheritance to benefit her precious daughter. What she didn't know was that I was perfectly calm for a reason. These will help Emily with the down payment on her dream house. Patricia continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction. After all, she's actually blood family, unlike you. She opened the box, displaying the glittering pieces inside with obvious greed in her eyes. I took a sip of the tea she'd served, hiding my smile behind the cup. Are you sure you want to do this, Patricia? I asked quietly. Those pieces have been in my grandmother's family for generations. Oh please, he scoffed, picking up what appeared to be a stunning diamond necklace. Your grandmother was just a small-town jewelry maker. These are probably cheap costume pieces anyway, but they'll fetch enough for Emily's house deposit. If only she knew, my grandmother hadn't been just a small-town jewelry maker. She'd been one of the most skilled artisans in her field, known for her ability to create perfect replicas of priceless pieces. She'd also been incredibly wise about protecting her real treasures. Besides, Patricia continued, her voice sharp, these should have gone to Emily anyway. You've been married to my son for 5 years, and what have you contributed? No children, just your little teaching job. Emily needs these more than you do. I thought about the real jewelry collection safely stored in a bank vault my grandmother had set up years ago. She taught me well about protecting what mattered. Every piece in that box has a story, I said softly. Are you sure you don't want to hear them before you sell them? Patricia rolled her eyes. Stories don't pay for houses, Isabella. I've already contacted an auction house. They're coming tomorrow to collect everything. She closed the box with a decisive snap. Maybe this will teach you that in this family, blood matters more than marriage. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. You might want to check the box again, Patricia. There's more to it than meets the eye. What are you babbling about? She demanded, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. My grandmother always said that true value lies beneath the surface, I replied, heading for the door. You might want to look more carefully before you contact that auction house. Are you threatening me? Patricia's voice rose, her face flushing red. Wait until I tell David about this. He'll finally see what kind of woman he married. I paused at the door, thinking about my husband, who was currently on a business trip. By all means, tell David. In fact, I encourage you to have everything properly appraised before you make any decisions. As I drove home, I couldn't help but smile, remembering the day my grandmother had shown me the truth about her jewelry collection. I was 16, and she called me into her workshop, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Bella, she'd said, holding up 2 identical diamond necklaces. Which one is real? I'd studied them carefully, but couldn't tell the difference. That's when she taught me her most valuable lesson about protecting what matters. Every piece in her collection had a perfect replica, and only she knew which was which. She'd spent years creating them, preparing for exactly this kind of situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Stop trying to scare me with your ridiculous hints. These jewels are being sold tomorrow, and that's final. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Laura, my grandmother's old friend who worked at the auction house Patricia had contacted. It's starting, I told her. She's bringing in the replicas tomorrow. Laura chuckled. Don't worry, honey. I'll make sure everything goes exactly as your grandmother planned. That evening, as I sat in my study looking at photos of my grandmother, I remembered her words. People who take what isn't theirs often learn their lessons the hard way. Patricia was about to learn just how right my grandmother had been. My phone rang again. It was David. Bella, my mother just called me, ranting about you threatening her over some jewelry. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Your mother is trying to sell my grandmother's jewelry collection to help Emily buy a house. She took the box from our house while you were away. There was a long pause. She did what? Bella, I'm so sorry. I'll talk to her, make her return everything. No, I said firmly. Let her go through with it. Trust me, David. Sometimes people need to learn lessons for themselves. What are you planning? He asked, knowing me well enough to hear the certainty in my voice. Just wait, I replied. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting. As I hung up, I walked to my home office and opened my grandmother's old diary. Inside was a detailed inventory of every piece in her collection, both the originals and the replicas. Patricia thought she was selling precious jewelry to help her daughter, but what she didn't know was that my grandmother had designed each replica with a special feature, a kind of signature that would be impossible to miss during a proper appraisal. Tomorrow, Patricia would learn exactly what happened to people who tried to steal from my grandmother's legacy. I smiled, thinking about the secret compartment in the box that Patricia hadn't found yet. The one containing my grandmother's letter explaining exactly what she'd done with the real jewelry collection. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about confrontation. It's about letting people walk right into the traps they set for themselves. The next morning, I arrived at the auction house just as Patricia was strutting through the front doors, the rosewood box clutched triumphantly in her arms. Emily trailed behind her, already dressed like she owned a mansion instead of the small apartment she shared with 3 roommates. Laura met them at the reception desk, her professional demeanor perfect as she welcomed them. I stayed in the background, watching the scene unfold. "These are museum-quality pieces," Patricia announced loudly, setting the box on Laura's desk. "My mother-in-law collected them over many years." The lie rolled smoothly off her tongue, as though she hadn't spent years dismissing my grandmother as a simple craftswoman. Laura opened the box carefully, her trained eyes scanning each piece. I saw the moment she spotted my grandmother's signature marks, the tiny, almost invisible details that distinguished the replicas from the originals. Her expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight twitch of her lips. "Very interesting pieces," Laura murmured, lifting the diamond necklace Patricia had been so excited about. "Let me call our senior appraiser, Mr. Thompson. He specializes in vintage jewelry." Patricia preened, already counting the money in her head. "Emily, darling, soon you'll have your dream house. Won't that be wonderful?" Emily nodded eagerly. "Maybe we can even get that 5-bedroom in the gated community, the one with the pool." I had to hold back a laugh. They were about to learn an expensive lesson about counting chickens before they hatched. Mr. Thompson arrived, his white gloves and magnifying glass at the ready. He began examining each piece methodically, his expression growing more intrigued with each item he inspected. "Fascinating," he said finally, setting down a sapphire bracelet. "These are some of the finest replicas I've ever seen." The word replicas hit Patricia like a physical blow. "What do you mean, replicas?" she demanded, her voice rising. "These are genuine antiques." Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. "Oh, they're certainly valuable in their own right. These are masterwork replicas crafted by someone with extraordinary skill. Each piece has a tiny maker's mark. See here." He pointed to a nearly invisible symbol on the necklace. "This is the signature of Elena Martinez, one of the most renowned jewelry replicators of her time." Patricia's face went from red to white in seconds. "No, that's impossible. These are real." "Actually," Laura interjected smoothly, "Elena Martinez was known for creating perfect replicas of famous pieces. Her work is highly valued in certain circles, but not quite in the way you might have hoped." She named a figure that was about 1/10 of what Patricia had clearly been expecting. Emily's dreams of a poolside mansion visibly crumbled. "But Mom, you said. Where are the real pieces?" Patricia whirled to face me, finally noticing my presence. You know about this." I stepped forward, pulling out my grandmother's letter from my bag. "I tried to tell you to check the box more carefully, Patricia. Maybe now you'd like to look at that secret compartment." Laura demonstrated how to press the hidden catch, revealing a small space beneath the jewelry trays. Inside lay a single envelope yellowed with age. Patricia snatched it up, her hands shaking as she read my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "To whoever thinks they can take what isn't theirs. The real collection is exactly where it belongs, safe from those who value gold over family. What you hold are my masterworks, replicas I created to protect my true legacy. Remember, not all that glitters is gold, and not all family is bound by blood." "You tricked me," Patricia's voice echoed through the auction house. "No," I replied calmly. "You tried to steal what wasn't yours, and you didn't even bother to learn its true history. My grandmother spent years creating these replicas because she knew someday someone would try to take advantage of her legacy." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "I would point out that these replicas are still quite valuable to collectors. Elena Martinez's work is highly sought after in certain circles." But Patricia wasn't listening. She was too busy fumbling with her phone, probably trying to reach David. I'd already texted him the whole story, including photos of the letter and his mother's attempt to sell my inheritance. Emily slumped in her chair, her dreams of instant wealth evaporating. Mom, what are we going to do about the house? I already told everyone. Perhaps, I suggested quietly, this is a good time to learn about earning things for yourself, instead of taking them from others. Patricia grabbed the box, her movements jerky with rage. This isn't over, she threatened, heading for the door. David will hear all about how you humiliated us. I watched them leave, feeling oddly peaceful. Laura approached me, holding back a smile. Your grandmother would have loved this, she said. She always said the best lessons come from our own mistakes. She also said that true value isn't about what something costs. I replied, thinking of the real jewelry collection still safely stored away. It's about what it teaches us. As I headed home, I thought about how my grandmother's wisdom had extended far beyond her craft. She'd known that someday someone would try to take advantage of her legacy. Instead of just locking everything away, she created this elaborate lesson, turning her skill into both protection and education. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Just talked to Mom. Coming home early. We need to have a family meeting. I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of some much-needed changes in our family dynamic. Patricia had learned an expensive lesson about greed and assumptions. Now it was time to see if she'd learned anything about the true meaning of family. David came home the next day, his face etched with a mix of exhaustion and determination. We sat in our living room as I showed him everything. My grandmother's letter, photos of the real jewelry collection, and most importantly, the security camera footage of his mother taking a box from our house while we were away. I knew she could be difficult, he said, running a hand through his hair. But this, stealing from our house, trying to sell your inheritance, I never thought she'd go this far. It's been building for years, I replied softly. The snide comments about my family, the constant favoritism toward Emily, the way she's tried to undermine our marriage. This was just her biggest move yet. Before David could respond, our doorbell rang. Patricia stood there, Emily trailing behind her like a chastened shadow. Gone was the triumphant smirk she'd worn yesterday. Now she looked like someone who'd swallowed something bitter. Well, she demanded, pushing past us into the living room. Are you happy now, Isabella? You've humiliated us in front of everyone. David stepped forward, his voice firm. No, Mom, you humiliated yourself. You broke into our house and tried to steal from my wife. Steal? Patricia's voice rose. I was trying to help your sister. Family helps family. Yes, I interjected calmly. Family does help family. But you've never seen me as family, have you, Patricia? The room fell silent. Emily shifted uncomfortably on her feet, looking anywhere but at me. I have something to show you, I said, opening my laptop. The video played clearly, Patricia entering our house with her spare key, which was meant for emergencies only, heading straight for my study where the jewelry box was kept. You spied on me, Patricia gasped. No, David answered for me. She protected her home, like any sensible person would. I opened another file, photos of the real jewelry collection, each piece gleaming with authentic beauty. These are the originals, I explained. Safe where my grandmother put them years ago. She created the replicas not just to protect her work, but to teach a lesson about value and trust. Patricia sank onto our couch, her bravado finally cracking. All this time you knew? Of course I knew. My grandmother taught me more than just about jewelry. She taught me about protecting what matters, about watching and waiting, about letting people reveal their true characters through their own actions. Emily spoke up for the first time, her voice small. The house I wanted. I told everyone I was getting it. Maybe, I suggested, it's time to think about earning things for yourself. My grandmother built her collection piece by piece. She taught me that anything worth having is worth working for. David placed a hand on my shoulder. Mom, you need to return the spare key. And we need to set some serious boundaries going forward. Patricia clutched her handbag, looking trapped. But we're family. Yes, I agreed. We are. And families should respect each other, support each other, not steal and scheme against each other. My grandmother's replicas weren't just copies. They were a test. One you failed spectacularly. What happens now? Emily asked, finally meeting my eyes. I pulled out an envelope. Inside is information about a first-time homebuyers program, real estate courses, financial planning resources. If you're serious about wanting a house, here's how you can work toward it legitimately. Emily took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. Patricia stood abruptly. This isn't what I came for. I came for an apology. No, David said firmly. You came hoping to bully us into giving you what you wanted. That's not happening anymore. Things are going to change. As they left, Patricia's shoulders slumped in defeat. I thought about my grandmother's words. Sometimes the most valuable things we own are the lessons we learn. A week later, Emily called me, her voice hesitant. I signed up for one of those real estate courses, and I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. Patricia still avoided family gatherings, nursing her wounded pride, but her power over our lives was broken. David and I were stronger for having faced this together, and I knew my grandmother would have been proud. The jewelry box sits in my study now, filled with the replicas, a reminder that true value isn't always about what something costs, but what it teaches us about ourselves and others. Sometimes the most precious things we own are the wisdom to wait, the strength to stand firm, and the courage to let truth reveal itself in its own time. My grandmother's real legacy wasn't just in the genuine pieces she created, but in the lessons she left behind. Lessons about patience, protection, and the true meaning of family. As I look at the box now, I smile, knowing that its greatest value was never in the jewelry it contained, but in the truth it revealed.